Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Nature Folklore Sessions. It's 16th of January 2022. Well, it's lovely that you can join us on this Sunday afternoon. So, thank you very much for joining me on our weekly time of exploring nature centered folklore, connecting this within your favorite sanctuary space, and expressing inspired visions from your sanctuary through your poetry, writing, art, craft, and even your problem solving. So, this is part two of the divination series, and it's divination with Ogham. And we got some guests today. A few guests. We got this lad here, Cliff Carr. He's a former bard of Avebury, and there's such people that are appointed there. And who else we got? We got Margie Dunn. She's got a delightful presentation of the lovely local artist here, and she writes wonderful poems. But she's doing something a little bit different for us later on today. So I look forward to sharing that with you. And we got our regular poet, almost poet in residence now, Chandler Nichols, with another beautiful poem or two. Delightful guest to have on Nature Folklore. I know you enjoy having her presenting. So she's got a contribution to this on divination time, and it's going to be a nice surprise for myself. She's going to be live. She's not backstage yet, but I'm sure she'll turn up very soon. And as usual, letting you know these nature folklore sessions, the later videos, and the tree sanctuary support, all this is brought to you due to support from you lovely subscribers. I deeply appreciate that you subscribed through the Patreon, which is that thing over there. There we go. That's the address. And we also have PayPal donators as well. So thank you very much, because I know subscribers are among you that are watching this afternoon here in Ireland, and you watch every week. So thank you very much for your support, and more subscribers definitely welcome. Appreciate it, because without you, I couldn't fund doing the show that I share with you on the Sundays. So let me see which lovely early birds have joined in with us already today. Cliff Carr, as we mentioned, is going to be the first guest. He's around. Good afternoon. And Claire Roach is here. Wonderful to see. A labor of love, John. Looking forward to seeing you and the guest. Because Claire's been around pretty much this week, because there's a lot to do for the moving out. And she's seen, there's actually been a lot more extra work on this, uh, which is, in a way, a bit of a strange way after what I said a couple of weeks ago. And I mentioned that okay, we're gonna have more guests, and there's gonna be a less of me. But I think today, with what's put together, is one of these big presentation things from me, and I think you'll understand why when we get to it. Might be the last time I do this, but I'll explain why. We got more of you coming on now. We got Terry Sleck Hardwick from Maryland, USA, and Donna Johnson's here from New Mexico as well, which is lovely. Thanks very much for joining us as we get underway with this wonderful show. And there is a lot of show today. And I put all this together, and I realized I didn't do the prompt. I've been doing these prompts. The first week, if you remember, I did an introduction, the usefulness of prompts, and someone else has appeared. Oh, Penny Stevenson's here. Hello, Penny from North Lincolnshire. Fantastic. Thanks for joining. Yeah, as I say, the first week I gave an introduction, the usefulness of prompts, and to actually just squiggle things down, that you actually can put a little squiggle to represent something you see, feel, or you're inspired, or random words, just doodles. It's wonderful. So I gave that introduction. Last week, I talked about what is your calling? What is your vocation? And we went on to that. Now, I didn't write notes for this week because I only thought of it about 20 minutes ago. I hadn't done the prompts. So today's prompt really I would say, is what's missing. And I'm going to bring this up front because I think this is where the using the Orm divination as prompts can be a great help. So the kind of prompting to think of for writing doodles about is really, what do you feel is missing in your life? And that can go on different levels, can't it? And can be minimal things which are often material. For instance, whilst doing this show, I think, I wish I had a stream deck. And a stream deck is something where I can press buttons instead of use a mouse, and it helps give smooth transition. But with a lot of these little material things we think of, nobody knows the difference. If I was using a stream deck today, at the end of the show, you wouldn't be saying, John did a much better nature folklore today. He used a stream deck. You wouldn't be doing that. You wouldn't notice. So, these are sort of the irrelevant. And then we go on to I suppose the what's missing, the more deeper things, and we start thinking about health. And certainly, I think a bit about that one myself. Your financial situation, where you're living, the people that surround you, your job. So these are things you think something missing, and then there's that deeper missing thing where you feel something's missing, but you don't know what it is that's missing. And obviously, that's the drive that gets people into looking for their spirituality, going on pilgrimages. And unfortunately, that puts people perhaps in the most vulnerability situation. And that's where the traders and marketers come in with that solution for that thing that's missing. And to get that thing that's missing, probably will cost you a fortune. So there is that vulnerability thing. Talked last week about fortune tellers; they're very good at that. But anyway, as far as jotting your doodles down, the sort of things I'm thinking of is when did you realize something was missing? Think of that time and write about their circumstances. When did you think something was missing? And why? Why did you suddenly? What was the revelation that something is missing? And then kind of think, well, what's the prognosis of this? When is this going to be sorted out? This thing missing. What steps are you taking, or what's coming into your life where that missing element is starting to be fulfilled? And then the other side is, why do you think there's no hope in that missing thing being fulfilled? I'm really going into the geometry subject today, and I never fear that the prompt next week is going to be much more geometry, much more joyful. But anyway, this is something I feel that's important. I'm bringing this up at the front, thinking of the prompt of today, what is missing. And I think I better leave it to that. As I say, this is impromptu. I only thought about this a few minutes ago. But think of these because I'm going to be talking about prompts. We're talking about Ogham divination. I'm going to be talking about prompts from that. And I find that one of the things, hopefully this will help, is that I go through some of this stuff. You might be able to relate to the missing link, the connections. Missing is often related to connecting. It's something you're not connecting to. And sometimes you're not connecting to yourself. If you become so introvert and you're not experiencing things, then you're sort of isolated from everything that's around you. So the thing that's missing is yourself. Bring yourself out. So there's that to consider and write down. Anyway, I think I've said enough on that one. That's the prompt today: is what is missing, and something to ponder on in the back of the mind as I talk about this own stuff. So I've mentioned several times when I present something on nature folklore. I talk about my first introduction to and I tell you this several times, so I'm going to try and keep this short. It was on Iona. Well, I heard it from the family, but Iona was where it had the biggest impact, and that was nearly 50 years ago. And I was told the tale of Iona being the place where the Gaels met the Picts. When this happened, I'm not sure. Was it during Columkill's time or Oran's time? Oran was a druid that was on Iona when Columkill arrived from Derry. And or was there an on presence of some kind of tree language presence on Iona well before Columkill and well before Oran inherited that wisdom? Very doubtful that third option, but it is possible. And I was talking about what's missing. I know with myself, if I feel there's something missing, It's incredibly resolved. Look at behind on the screen there. Just get amongst the trees, get amongst on the benches there are, or even by sides some water, and suddenly there's that connection. And what you were sort of flapping about that was missing suddenly is not there anymore. It's wholesome. So there's a thing, and that might be related to what you might relate as I talk about these little Ogham elements. Anyway, the story I was told, the Gaels had an oral language that they shared, and it was weaving their interpretation of trees into this language uh, that they use to explain things, and the experiences of living is relating to the trees as prompts and knitting that together in order to have some kind of language communication with someone else. But meanwhile, I should have some. I should be bringing up some pictures here for you. The Picts had their points uh, language, didn't they? They had what am I missing out here? Well, here's Iona, and that's a lovely area we shot. This is where it all began, and there's a lovely beach thing. I can't remember, but here we go. There's a nice thing of the shared language. I see Chandler's trying to get in the background there, but that's a nice symbolism to me in the shared language, and I'm going to use that as my backdrop as from now. So excuse me as I get to that. Oh, wrong thing. I should have my stream deck to sort this out one day. There we go. Anyway, so we have the point seam. There we go. We will recognize this sort of thing. The point seam is done with a sharp instrument against the stone, and that's very similar to the orm that we see today. And I think I got the Brandybutt stone in Scotland, the one I love to bring up. The pig stone. Look at that orm on the left on your screen there, and that's before there was a housing estate, housing development around there. That photo goes back a long time. That'd be way back into the 60s, I imagine. Anyway, I was told that the two languages, the tree language and the Pict language, came together. It was a peace pact of connection between the Picts and Gaels in what has become Scotland. Now, the result of this language merging was the ability of the Gaels to archive what they spoke from their tree language because they could have something that could be imitated from those. Strokes on the stone could be put on wood and eventually onto parchment. And a lot of their language was probably prophecy and divination. That's how I feel this Ogham stuff started. It was prompts, and it was prompts used for prophecy and divination. So I think this was more likely to have happened during Columbkill's time when there was transition. And there's something I got here. You can't it evolved into the scribing, and Columbkill was definitely the one who got the scribing going. He was quite a pioneer in the new medieval scribing age, and it was as big then under Columbkill as the digital age is with us now. It'd be like when the first Commodores came out, when Columbkill came around in relation to the scribing. And then when the 7th century came along, that's when you got the Pentiums and all that in the scribing world. Even so, it's very uncertain as Columbkill was a pioneer of translating old Irish tales using a Latinized alphabet. They'd learned that, they were scholars of that. But that, excuse me, and that alphabet was limited to 20 letters, not the 26 letters or 26 symbols of Orm that we use. And there's 26 in our Latin alphabet, isn't it? So back in Columbkill scribing days, they still had just 20 Latinized letters. And as I mentioned earlier, the medieval scribing, it was linear. They could only write things in linear. And as you know, with Orm, it started off in symbolic from the roots up, a bit like the Chinese did. And Chinese had a tree language as well. So there you go, ground up like the growing of a tree, like Ogham scribing is on stones. And we try and spell things out with this. We try and go linear in a sort of upwards way. But in the earliest days, all these symbols, though they seem joined together, were actually a sequence of prompts. and you could tell a story from each symbol. If you tried to read it in a Latinized way, it's just gobbledygook. And it's like that on the oldest stones as well. It was about 9th, 10th century when people started Latinizing the Orm so it formed words. So that was a later development inspired by the Latin way of doing things. So a lot of tourism trinkets that we get, they tend to spell our names, don't they, with Ogham words. So the trinkets tend to be linear. So it's not really a prompting language when we get these trinkets. Now, the linear Latin symbol language, it was eventually reduced to 18 letters, and all those 18 letters were named after trees. And that's still the way in the Scottish Gaelic, the old Gaelic, that's still very much the language of there now. The Irish is a different development from that. So, did Columkill translate from some Ogham from Oran using the older line mark uh, cuttings, or was it a tree branch language? That's the one thing we probably won't know. Anyway, Oran being of Gaelic tree people origin, I think that story is explained through the arrival of the Milesians in Ireland, how a tree language got here, but I'm not going to cover that. I'll cover that another Sunday. But through folklore, it seems that Columkill was familiar with Ogham, especially sounds, applying sounds to Ogham. There's legend that he applied sounds to each Ogham symbol. And there's a famous story of Columkill copying a book of Psalms that was owned by his teacher, St. Finian, and in Moville, which is now Newtonards. It's north of the Strangford Loch in Northern Ireland. That's the remains as it is now there. And so it's said that he stole that. And then there's a whole famous story of the Battle of the Books below Ben Bulben in County Sligo, because Finian objected, and there was the court at Tara. Columkill had to hand the book back. There was the Battle of the Books, as I said. There was other instances that brought about that. It was really a battle that had been brewing between the Northern O'Neills and Southern O'Neills, which had gone into different cultures. I won't go deep into the history of that. But this brought Columkill to the court in Tara, and he actually had the book returned to him if he could go up into Derrida that they were having problems with and save 2,000 souls, convert 2,000 souls to Christianity. That's the Catholic story of it, in exchange for the 2,000 souls that died in the Battle of the Books. And that's what became Scotland. So the Psalms book that Columkill copied, he got it back through this court thing on condition he went to Scotland. And in it said the unique thing it was that sounds there showed how to sing the Psalms. And eventually that book came back to his Donegal family, part of the Northern O'Neills, and it was actually used as the Catholic, there it is, that was used as a mascot for hundreds of years. But the book Columkill copied at Moville, um, and was this his reference for Ogham to Latin? Is this what started it off? He got this from Moville, and it's speculation, but was there that link between Ogham and Latin and how you can merge the two together? Is that how this started with this transcribing? Is that how Ogham became joined up word language and linear? These are things, as I say, that uh, there's this whole thing. I think I'll talk about it in a moment. This idea of questions. Don't worry about the answers. Just contemplate on them. And it's amazing what wisdom and stuff comes to you. But the founding point of these early Ogham stories, I think, reveals that how Ogham started as a prompting language. And this is what I'm meandering around to. And I'm all for prompts more than actually reading full books, because I think we may refer to prompts more often. Well, books, we get books, we see a little bit maybe over a cup of coffee. There are some people that are dedicated to books, but I think most books, a little bit is read, up on the bookshelf, forgotten. Whereas prompts seem to give us a bit of an emotional and visual experience. And that really it brands into the memory, I think, and we were always bringing up those prompts. So to me, that's a more powerful language. And I believe cave art wasn't just pretty cave art by the ancients. I always feel that they were prompts for something. People that visited the cave, it was a prompt. I don't know what. It might be say this is a good hunting place for that. Only the people of that time, I think, fully understood that. So today with divination with Orm, we might do something like reach for the. I got a Catholic up rather than that. We might reach for Orm sticks, random Orm sticks, or we reach for cards, divination cards with pictures of trees and Orm symbols. So I think each week I will suggest how nature folklore can be useful addition to our lives because the folklore is lovely and it's storytelling and it sets off our imagination. But how useful is it? In addition to these fascinating, maybe historical linked stories. But for me, some kind of tool for prompting is usually far more useful than referring to a book or even a YouTube video clip. Building the labyrinth gardens here, and this is here's whoa. Let's get this in. That's the it's quite abundant there. But this was partially inspired by the idea of having prompts. And when we leave Karakori and the Labyrinth Gardens, which is actually going to be in a few weeks, it'll be exactly 13 years since the labyrinth was first walkable, and that is how it was when it was. There was over 300 trees planted in November. It was a bit boggy for walking around during the winter, so the first time of being able to walk it was actually at Imbolc in 2009, 13 years ago, when it was walkable. So those are it. It went from that to this abundance here. And as you saw in my back cloth, there's the center of it right there. Fantastic. So things I personally do not believe in. Let's go into that. I'm saying I don't, for myself, I don't believe in answers. I don't believe in facts. I don't believe in beginnings, ends, time, distance, and science. Bizarre, isn't it? Very eccentric. As I say, don't believe in answers, facts, beginnings, ends, time, distance, and science. So here I am. I actually achieved a university degree in food science many years ago. Yeah, I'm carrying those beliefs. And I sometimes go along with this stuff, the organized stuff, believing in time and date and the rest of it, superficially, just to avoid confrontation. But boy, if you say you don't believe in those things, as I find, you're really setting yourself up for a lot of confrontation because we were schooled in all that stuff and it is useful. But with what people call answers, I only see them as a portal to 100 more questions. But living with questions, that's another delightful matter. I believe it's through living with questions that we actually sustain our sense of wonder. And within this tree labyrinth, I invite people, the visitors that came here, to contemplate their questions and then connect and live with the visions inspired by both the questions through asking them whilst ask your questions when you're among the trees. As I say, I feel pretty whole. If there's a longing, if I think something's missing, get amongst the trees. Suddenly, you're quite contented with weaving what's around you. It's a feeling there isn't really anything missing. You just got to appreciate what you got. There's kind of some Chinese Buddhist logic in that somewhere. Uh, but these visions, when we get this, these are promptings. You ask the question, visions come to you, to me, if you allow it, allow the trust in this sort of space. And I find you ask the questions, these visions come to you, and the pictures keep coming up, and it seems to create a story. I find you can pull stories out of these lovely clear visions, and these become a prophecy of our present moment, and even become I got it, a guided map to live with, and you just follow that story. So it seems we sustain wonder, we sustain clarity of inspiration, we sustain use of our instinct, our presence, and also connection to our conscience and the wisdom it brings forth. And to me, that's all with prompts. In this case, you're in the labyrinth, and the trees are there. These are prompts. And I'm going to be talking about these divination with own symbols in prompts in the same way. And all that gives you the vision, gives you that kind of personal prophecy, and suddenly all that muddiness of guilt, shame, demoralization, and even fear vanishes away. And I think these muddy states, they're the vulnerabilities, like I'm saying, these thoughts, what's missing? And likewise, it's a muddy state, we're vulnerable, we get vulnerable. And it's as if religions, corporations, politicians, and other elitist bodies, they seem to hunt and prey on this to find which people they can absorb into it. We are a Borg, you'll be assimilated, that type of stuff. But if we stop thinking linear, I feel we're always got this thing. We've got to have a beginning, we've got to have an end, we've got to have a question, got to have an answer. If you can actually replace that linear thinking and vision and accept things more as spirals, waves, and cycles, there are wonderful inner revelations that seem to happen to us, and we got a whole different vision of doing things. And again, back to this, that's why I've done labyrinths, because you're not going along a straight track. Like I even think ley lines, and they're not straight tracks. They're more like waves. If you want to look into them, waves and cycles, even there. But that's another subject. So it helps you to form your visions out of that spirally thinking and response rather than that logical straight line. And that's what I'm going to talk about again, talking about the divination with Orm. So it's been a running theme of encouragement invited to walkers here through 13 years of these labyrinth gardeners, especially within the tree labyrinth, and that's the centre behind. And the new owners, fortunately, at Karakori, they set on continuing something similar, as they seem quite in tune with this. They're really into the science, and they have this thought how scientists think linear. They think of beginnings and ends. Why can't scientists be more like Einstein and Newton that worked on kind of spiral visions and built on that? Anyway, away from the tree labyrinth, I'm going to get on with the Orm now because I'm moving on. Time's moving on rapidly, and these Orm symbols, I hope you'll find their fabulous response, fabulous prompt, and the easiest way for us to relate to uh, our living, just like I'm sure it was for the ancients. And this is what I'm saying. Uh, how is the folklore useful for us today? For the ancients, these prompts were useful before there was scribable languages, before that was invented. And I believe that prompts can keep us alive in inspiration and ideas, which is our central map, a movement. And it helps, as I say, with that prompt, as I was saying at the beginning, what's missing. I feel if you've got a life of the spiral with these prompts, it seems you do adapt to what's around you and the vision that you got. But see what comes out when you scribe that, when I talked about that as a prompt. So, it's prompts for us to write, prompts for us to draw, prompts to help us unravel problems, and also prompts for us to build. I say I don't believe in time and space. They are still fabulous tools, essential tools. We couldn't build things without that awareness, but don't let that seem like a living being. It's tools that are in your hand. That's what I believe in. So another question is, where did the legendary Oma? We talk. You go into this Oma stuff, and you got this Oma this Oma person. Let's see if I can get a bit of Oma. There he is. There's an artist's impression of Oma. Strange character. Lots of stories with him. So where does he come into it? The mystical father of Om. Actually, I haven't time to tell you about him today. We'll deal with. I'll come across him with another Om session. So let's see what you're saying at the moment. I'll take a wee breather out of this. So what we got? We got Lema Davis here from Tennessee. Let's just get rid of that picture for a moment, and so I can have a look at what you're saying. Yeah, Lema's here, and he said something else. He's saying the sound is a bit spotty. Anyone else got this? Because I know Lema had some spotty sound another time. I've not got any. The signal here is showing full on. We don't seem to have a on the dial here. It shows it's okay. So anybody else getting a spotty sound? Because sometimes that can be a mic problem that I've got. And I haven't checked into. In fact, I'll take a quick view to make sure that the mic is exactly as it's supposed to be. Yeah, the mic is exactly how it's supposed to be. So let me know if you've got any problem. Sherry says sounds perfect here. And Cynthia Willis is here. Lovely that you're here. And she's sending out a blessing for Claire there. Hope you are well. And I see Chandler's got some visual there in the back, which is fabulous. Anyway, Sherry's saying good morning from Maine, which is lovely. So thanks for you additional people that have tuned in here. So I better carry on because it's 2:30 here. The main subject of the title is Divination with Ogham. So after my ramblings, let's get on with that. I'm going to move on to speaking about Robert Graves, who's 1948, the White Goddess. Let's see if I can get something up about this. No, he's not there. Anyway, there's the White Goddess book. Robert Graves, the White Goddess. And he was a huge foundation in his work, this book, to Gerald Gardner. It's one of the references he made when he founded the Wicca movement, and which is a sort of modern paganism during the 50s. Robert Graves included a lot about his views of Ogham in his White Goddess book. And this included a belief that the Ogham origins were from the European Gauls around 600 BC. And he believed that in 600 BC, the Gauls originally taught Ogham as a sign language. Well, that is the story even earlier than that here of the Tour de Danann. It said that Ogma, he developed the Ogham language as a sign language. And I suppose it makes sense because with our 10 fingers and thumbs that we do sort of crisscrossing, blah, blah, I haven't got the dexterity, but it wouldn't be very difficult to use our 10 fingers and thumbs to come out with 20 symbols. So it's a lovely thought. No proof of that, no evidence, but as I say, it's one of these things as a question, and we go out and pondering, and then we ponder it, we get these visions of where this goes. Now, most historical scholars have dismissed all of this white goddess stuff and Omer and the Gauls. They just say it's nonsense in the history of Ogham. Uh, so, what could be the earliest known archived indication of ancient Ogham? Uh, the use of Ogham really Ogham divination. I mean, the Ogham got into scribing, medieval scribes. It kind of exploded. It speeded up through the 7th century and really got moving in the 9th century when it was integrated with the Latinized and Greek scribing that was going on at high speed and was a commercial venture at that time. And the Ogham use as far as divination, there's records of that. Somehow there was a divination 9th century. And there's a recording of it's a scribe story of the Wooing of Eden. That was 9th century, and that included some Ogham. And in that story, there's a druid called Dallin. And in the story that the scribes wrote down, I can't remember which annal book it was, but it said that Dallin, he conducted some Ogham divination. And I assume with sticks, and it was divination that was used. Who was asking for it? Anyway, it was through using Ogham divination. It revealed where Mida was hiding with the 10 or Eden. So that was where divination. That's the earliest record of divination with Ogham sticks. Has been recorded. Now, the Book of Ballymote, this was around 1390 onwards. There were pages that featured the Ogham. Oh, here we go. We got a bard woo in there. Maybe I don't know why I got that picture there, but there's there anyway. Anyway, Book of Ballymote, 1390, not far away from here, and there's pages featuring the Ogham. A lot of students, Ogham students, academic students, they refer a lot to the Book of Ballymote in reference to the history of the Ogham. And there's a diagram amongst all this that's known as Fionas Window. This is someone who made a black and white version. I've got a Book of Ballymote version a bit later. I'll show you that picture. But I'm going to talk a bit about this diagram called Fiona's Window, Book of Ballymote, 1390. Um, Now, Fionn himself, that's where I got the bard. It means bard. And Fionn, they say means bard. I've been told, no, it doesn't. It means the light. I've been challenged on this, No, it doesn't mean light. It means a person of light, which in that case is, they say, is someone who's got blonde hair and blue eyes, is what Fionn, and he's a warrior. But it says that Fionn the bard is wooing a woman, and they'll bring that pardic photo up there again. And of course, when we talk of Finn, which one do you think of? Which ancient name do you think of then? Finn McCall, of course, a warrior leader, and it's speculation that he was bardic. Maybe his main job was to memorize the battle stories as much as leader. Maybe really that was the truth of it. Rather than a leader being a warrior leader, maybe he was a bard, just sat on the hill as a bard, letting the younger people get on with the battles. A bit like Brian Brew did, Brian Brew wasn't necessarily in the battles; he was in the background, maybe doodling some notes to record the battle. These are all speculation. Again, it's this old question about the wonder. But Finn McCool, Phil and McCunnell, some say cool or call. It does mean low or hidden, and it's also the descriptions, funnily enough, of a wild boar. And call can mean infinite wisdom. It's amazing how the variations of these old words can be. And as I say, Fionn can describe fair, the blonde hair, blue eyes, and just meaning handsome. So at this point, there we go. There's a boar, just in case you don't know what a boar is. There's a lot of stories of Finn McCall chasing boar. The Dermot and Groinier story includes that, of course. Anyway, at this point, I should describe how we call today's seers, prophets, sages, ovates, and diviners. How do all these people come into being? Now, some ancient time, there was one leader, one chieftain, one king, and the main quality of that person in that position was to be a prophet. Singular job, being a prophet, answered to everything, and included with this was the need to be an inspired bard, also a teacher, a logistics person, a mediator in court gatherings, also an ambassador in meetings with other tribes, and also was a medicine healing therapy person as well. So in Ireland, this all this became all too much. So about 1000 BC, it said there was an Irish high king, Olin Fuller, who said this was all too much for one person. And I did have an Olin Fuller picture, but it's gone. So he appointed a second high order person. There's that person there. And then we have the Druid. He was the second in command to the chieftain. And the Druid then took over the teaching and crafts of prophecy, divination, teaching, barding, and the medicine, I believe. And that's why, and the High King was left to handle the legislation, the court meetings, and the mediation, the logistics, and being an ambassador, and sometimes being a war leader. So we got the later, but the Druids, they ended up with a heavy load too. So they split their load by appointing and training a bard. And the bard took over as the prophet and messenger, while the Druid held on to divination, teaching, and the medicine. And then this got even more complicated because the bard was overworked. And so the bard appointed a seer and appointed someone else to be trained as a position of bard, the bard being now the messenger of the ovate, the druid, and the king, and the bard carried on as the ovate of the seer. So for the rest of this session, I will stick to the deeds of the ovates, the seers, and the diviners. But I find it interesting to think that in ancient times, what would be, if we were back in ancient times and one person did the whole thing, a priest today would also be the microbiologist because they were the same person. Um, Imagine that, a priest who developed vaccines and inoculated people. All right, okay. Back to Fiona's Window. Do I have something a bit on that? Because I find this fascinating. There it is. You can see it. This is direct out of the Book of Ballymore. There's the Fiona's circle, the window there. I showed you the white version earlier. From the Book of Ballymore, and the ancient use of is indicated there. And also going back to Robert Graves and his White Goddess book from the 40s, this seems to be where modern Ogham prophecy and divination has been seeded, especially by Gardner and the Wickers. And as I mentioned within the White Goddess book, Graves devoted a few chapters to his version of Ogham folklore. And many have dismissed Graves' approach to Ogham as just poetic speculation, absolutely no real references. But even so, Graves brought fresh attention to the Ogham as a prophecy, and that's why we talk about Ogham today, all thanks to Graves more than anything, more than the Book of Ballymore, and that was all soon adopted by many Wicca followers from the 50s and onwards from there. So, Ogham divination seems to have become a huge study amongst the Wiccans. But I'm speculating with that because I've never studied Wicca really. I've only spoken to a few Wicca followers about this, and that's the assumption I've made. Now, very common today is the use of divination sticks, and it's to me it's like using the yellow stalks of I Ching. I haven't got yellow stalks, but there's a bit of the I Ching, just in case you don't know what the I Ching is. Sorry, I got cut off. I hope you can hear this. I'm really having trouble getting back on at the moment. Right, are you? Here we go. Uh, right, sorry about that. I got cut off by something there for a few minutes. I hope you can hear me. I'm just going to check all the levels. Uh, let's try. Yeah, there was an instant cutoff. Here we go. I think we're all there. Please let me know. I'm still on the air with us. How embarrassing. Let's see. Are we still here? Back on now. Thought that was mine. No video and audio back. Sorry, I've no idea what happened there. It just screen went dead. The screen went dead, and I mean, anyway, back on with the wonderful show. As I say, um, the get back to the photos there. There, I was talking about Owen sticks, wasn't I? There we go. And my father's family, they were quite into this. I'm getting cut off again. Hang on. I don't understand what's going on here. Right, I'm back. Well, I haven't got a clue what's happening. Um, anyway, the father's family, the Owen sticks here, they were popular. And so I'm going to try to explain why. The other tool, which is more modern, is the use of cards. There's some more of the sticks, and then we have the cards there that people use. And it's a bit like simple tarot. And there's the Celtic tree. I did have a picture. There's Celtic tree oracle. That's someone who visited here. A Charlene Hildigo. You can do a search for that, which is the Celtic tree oracle. That's a set of cards you can use for divination. And then we got Dana O'Driscoll, who we've had on the show. There's a sample of hers. So there, you can use those. And as I say, you can use sticks as a divination thing. And say Sharon visited Cara Crawley, and we walked in the woodshed story. I'm still recovering from trying to get on here. But to use divination sticks or the cards like this, it's a simple practice. The R1, you refer to the R1, the Druid symbol, the R1 Owen, or even Owen, which is the 3 rays. So you can use that style. And some call those 3 rays the mind, body, spirit, land, sea, and sky, love, wisdom, and truth. What else we got? Maiden, mother, crone, birth, life, and rebirth, past, present, and future, ancestry, divination, and prophecy, and even the 3 strains, the sorrow, joy, and dreaming. Personally, I'd go for the last 3, just like my father's family used to do, which is past, present, future, ancestry, divination, and prophecy, or sorrow, joy, and dreaming. Now, randomly, what you do is pick up 3 sticks or 3 cards, something like this. I've got some of you already do this. There you go, 3 cards. And you lay them out like a Druid's 3-ray symbol, which in this case is, and you speak the story that comes to you. And that story is what was, the wisdom acquired, what is, and the map of what is coming up. Anyway, whilst I'm still on the graves and the white goddess, I'm going to bring up our first guest, which is Cliff Carr. He's watching, and he's formerly a bard of Avebury, and as I say, yes, they appoint bards there. And Cliff's quite a bards in the woods enthusiast in his own way where he lives. And there's a song by Cliff, which is who's disappearing to the cards, and this is around the 13 Ogham signs, around Graves' annual cycle. So we'll get this going. And Graves called this the Celtic Tree Calendar in his White Goddess book. So here's Cliff Carr's interpretation of that end song. And he's got some lovely photos. So here we go with first guest. He's actually on video, Cliff Carr. And I better find him double quick before we get cut off again. And here's Cliff Carr now with his 13 interpretation of the 13 symbols.
13 moons for 13 trees, the Ogham of the wood. For one to be oak wise, understand the word Druid. Another year has dawned, and bardic challenge reborn. The trees have had their sleeping slumber, it's time for their return. Beth, she stands white and elegant, the lady of the woods. The wolf and her reflecting light show the way for new beginnings. The fires from luge that welcome change, the light that climbs the sky. The whispering tree and protector bee, even cards from her are named. Chaste moons pure and virginal, ash is known as neon. A riddle of serpents and one of magic, one with the unicorn. The seed that grows above and below, Faerun takes centre stage. The strength that's held within his roots when cut like blood will bleed. Fern gives way to Salye, who protects us from the storm, whispering words of enchantment as the May Queen dawns. Some say, away with the Fae, at this time of fertility and love. Around the maypole with dance and chant, the dawning of fire and hawthorn. The mighty doer stands strong and broad, and the coming of the Dryad. His presence overpowers these, he is of knowledge, strong and wise. Tin may be a winter wood, wins battle with Durad this time. The blessing moon and battle scene, the trees face a change in life. Corn moon grows as autumn falls, Call her seeds she gives, the seed for knowledge and sustenance, divination and poetic justice. Harvest moon and time to reap, new and fruits all laid out. The joy, merriment, prosperity, equally ridding one's doubts. Entangled around the trunk, Luna's reflection in bloom. As the blood moon reveals herself, the hunters blow their horns. Protection that comes from Yettle, Beth moon of darker times. Flutes are made and music's played, this time of spiritual desire. Moon of Dur and Tree of Ruse, the battle with Tim once again. At this time of winter mid-wonder, the circle of life ingrained. 13 moons, the 13 trees, the Ogham of the wood. For one to be oak-wise, understand the word Druid.
Well, there we have it, folks. Gave me a chance to break. Cliff Carr there with his interpretation around the graves. 13 symbols related to the 13 moons. Big difference is the moons change over. The full moons are different every year, whereas the 13 symbols ended up with fixed dates. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but a few of you love that. Little Wing here. Love that. And Donna Johnson thought that was fantastic. Someone and Claire was saying enthralling. The Orm of the Woods. Yes. Song about the moon and life and growth. As I say, this is all around the shortened version, the modern Graves version from the 40s that was taken up by the Wickers in the 50s. And I remember my father's family were absolutely furious about it. And Cliff says, thanks for playing. I had a chat with Cliff on that. Regards to the different approach. It was beautiful. It was great that we got that on. We had a struggle to get that on actually. And Cliff knows we really were struggling to get that on. Anyway, we got there. We got there, which is fantastic. Anyway, so I'm gonna, as I say, this is a long session because I'm gonna take you on an adventure through the 20 symbols at present. There was a question by Lama earlier as well. It was something he said. Like to have a reference to the pictures you're showing. Where might I find them? That's an awkward one because this is a collection of some of my own photos from artist friends. There's public domain stuff. There's vintage uh, stuff that's out there for the public. There's a lot of that. So there's a whole mystery of, and also there is, was it Scopio is one of the photographic agencies I use as well. So that's a really it's quite a long answer to that, where the pictures came from. And Penny Stevenson said thank you, and Chandler says thanks for sharing. So I better move on, and I'm going to go through an adventure, 20 symbols, as I say, through because the did traditionally have 20 symbols. I'm trying to knock comments off here and get back to the pictures because pictures here are pretty vital. Um, and Omer's Tale of the Trees. Those who have got my Bathing in the Phase Breath, if you haven't, here's the cover. No, there is the cover. And in that, half of that book is Omer's Tale of the Trees within the Bathing of the Phase Breath. That keeps coming and going. And in my book, there, let's say half of it is, it's fictional. That book's fictional, but based on non-folklore and mythology. And this journey is presented in the book as a cycle of human life, its rights, and the passage of life. It's looking at life as our life actually having four seasons. Our complete life has had four seasons. If you've gone into astrology, progression of the moon, you'll understand a little bit what I'm getting at here. So our life has four seasons, like the seasons of a year. That our life in itself is a cycle, and each one has an acme or acme, and each acme has five symbols in it. And those five symbols, like I was talking about with column keel, think of those as five notes, like the pentatonic scale has five notes, and all ancient music and chanting had five notes as well. So this all ties together. And I wish I had more time to talk about that sound realm because it really adds harmony to this whole divination experience. And I've also added this journey, some of the practices, and a lot of you like to take the 13 ohm symbols of Graves and Gardner that came up in Cliff's song. You like to apply that. So I've applied this in this presentation as well, where relevant. And these, as we heard there from Cliff, they form 13 divisions of an annual cycle, those 13 ohms, like 13 moon cycles. But the moon cycles are not fixed dates. Someone here was saying, happy past moon. Who was it? Someone in the comments, past moon, because the moon here in Karakoram, I'm sure it might be not much different in the UK. The full moon, the point of full moon is actually 11:48 in the evening here tomorrow. So that's our full moon setting. So we're coming up to the full moon, and there we go. Right. Now I've lost it. Someone was saying happy past moon. That's why I brought that up. I've lost that. Right. Okay. They say it's the first round writing. Yeah, yeah, I suppose using the sticks. But what I was questioning earlier, if you go back to the beginning, was where did that come from? Where the writing came from? I'm repeating the beginning bit. Is the memory of trees is one thing, and this has come up around the world. The memory of trees, and actually, there's many tree species in every country of the world, and there was memory before people thought of writing. They could draw. There's the cave paintings and so forth, and this would be the same for birds. It'd be the same for animals, even types of stone and plants. But with trees, there's memory and associating a prompt to each tree. And then I went with the Picts and with other languages. There was a doodling using the edges of blades, and there are tree language associations with lines and with these doodlings. Ogham is not exclusive to this. There must be 8 other languages around the world that was associated to trees that made a batch of symbols. The Chinese were into it, the Mongolians, certainly um, Siberian, and also there's Central America. There's also a reference to that, and the Middle East. So the Ogham is not exclusive to tree language. That's the point. Anyway, better move on with the rest and get through these symbols before it's night time. Um, and as I say, I've included. I'm not a believer, as I say, in the 13 symbol branch of Ogham, but to many people they are, and it is wonderful prompting for them. So why not? If that's what they can follow as a bunch of symbols. Anyway, there's 20 sets of keyword conditions you can use during your Ogham stick divinations and card oracles from what I've done here. So I've added the three. Let's get to the pictures. I better get on with this. Uh, and I've given the true date months of the year where appropriate. I've also included, this is something I haven't talked about. There's 9 woods. Not only are there 13 Om symbols, but there's 9 woods out of the Om for fire burning rituals. So I've included that. Now there's a change. I've presented this on Nature Folklore before, but I've actually added something else. And I presented briefly last summer, and this is going to cause me to rewrite my Omer's Tale of the Trees. What I've included this, and this is the research work of this wonderful man here, Damien McManus. He's a retired professor of ancient languages at Trinity College, Dublin. And McManus's work seems to have become very fashionable lately. And I've been hearing of a few writers in the last month who have been talking to me about their own books that they're writing, and they're all referring to McManus. And they're rapidly trying to get their books out first, based on their deep research on YouTube, of course. And Damien McManus, he had an incredible approach, in my opinion, to the own translations. And I'm going to include some of the changes and interpretations that have now been suggested by Damien McManus. Now, Damien McManus did publish a main book about this, about his reformed interpretation, and it's this book, um, A Guide to Ogham. And unfortunately, you can't just dash off to the bookshop and get this. The book came out in 1991. It's out of print. It was out of print within months. Seemed like there was first printing, boom, it was gone. And if you try and get it secondhand, I've been trying for years. Some of you have succeeded, but if you go, I went on Google a couple of days ago, and I found 2 copies available on Google. One was available for 25,000 euros, and the other one was 32,000 euros. So, best of luck trying to get a copy of this book. I'd love to it. Anyway, a bit more about Damien McManus. He was a professor of early Irish at Trinity College, Dublin, and he was also head of the Irish department. He only retired last year, I think. And McManus was also director of a Bardic project in Trinity. And that Bardic project, the book's still out of that one. There are 500 medieval Irish poems that they researched. But I'm going to include my interpretation of McManus's approach to Ogham with some help from, I actually got some help from a publisher of a few years ago, publisher of myths and legends. His name is Niall McCoyter, and he introduced me to McManus. So I'm going to kick off with Bear the Birch. There we go. Bear the Birch is the first one. Eventually, there it is. There's a birch tree for you. Nice and easy, straightforward. First acme, our spring, individuality, our birth. And birch is a lovely way to start off in bulk. I know it's me saying I don't believe in starts. Anyways, we're getting into that part of the cycle where the birch is, which is the awakening of the next cycle, the awakening of the year. So there's no changes there by McManus. And as I put in my overtail of the trees, and see if I can get an illustration of them. Bay of the Birch, there it is. Annual cycle readers, that's 24th of December to 20th of January. And for the fire burning enthusiasts, the fire burning of birch sticks is for purification and for new starts. And the divination prompt to the birch is for the first note of our budding, blossoming spring. Great prompt for that. Also for birthing and encouraging the bringing of new life onto this earth. And the birch also prompts rebirth, change, purification, pioneering, and brushing away the negativity from the winter. And then we go on to Lush Rowan, uh, from an ancient word. This comes from Lush is from an ancient word for flame. And of course, the rowan has the wonderful red berries. So it's also fitting for around Imbolc and early spring. There's no berries at Imbolc, but of course, there is an association because of Brigid and the flames. Also, men in council, they used to burn. There's a men in council. Well, come on, men in council. There you go. They used to burn rowan sticks to bring about peace through their meetings. And there's some rowan sticks there as well. Maybe that's the sort of thing they burn. And this was the calling, the calling forward of the goddess for their guidance. So Lucia Rowan, for annual cycle readers, that's 21st of January to 17th of February. And for the fire burning of sticks is calling upon the goddess and the she as well to be present and calming in council situations. I'm sorry, these pictures are popping up all over the place. It's a divination prompt for loving, also. Second note of our budding, blossoming spring encourages discovery of unconditional love and our passions on earth. Also, we can go to Lush for prompting intuition, inspiration, insight, protection from unwanted enchantment. It's a wonderful, with the council, place of sanctuary, goddess guidance over hearth fires, and meditation within the court circles. So it's great for our blessings. So we go to family order. If I can get there, there's an order tree. Um, and no problem with that one. With McManus, ancient word. Fairn is an ancient word that describes order. It describes order in terms of its catkins and the red sap that comes from his buds that was in Cliff's song there. So the divination prompt is sensing, its third note of our budding, blossoming spring, and encourages discovering how our senses respond to the elements. And also, that's the from the Almost Tale of the Trees, the Family Order. Great for ongoing, evolving spirit within us, the bridge between people, a bridge between situations, and an important thing today, an eliminator of division and the inner voice of reason. Those are things that should prompt. So let's go on to the screen is trying to disappear again. Sal or Sally or Solia the willow, again from the ancient word for willow. It's a tree that's very important for bees in spring. So there's from the Oma Tale of the Trees. Let's see, that's the Oma's version. The annual cycle readers, this is 15th of April to 12th of May. For the fire burners, for celebration, the sticks are great for cleansing, confidence, and trust. Also, great divination for balancing. It's the fourth note of our budding, blossoming spring. So, prompting for fire burning and encouragement for experiencing and accepting the ebbs and flows of our sorrow and joy, because they both come and go. Great prompts for healing, therapy, nursing, baptism, weaving, repairing, and becoming aware that there is ebb and flow, that there are cycles. So it's good for that. Now, here we go. Something exciting. Nuin or Nin for ash. Now, this is a very vague one. I'm going to take the pictures off here. Because Nin itself, it comes from a word for a forked branch. And most trees have forked branches, so that's a bit vague. So McManus, he was bold to say that this is the wrong word and the wrong tree because Nuan, the ash, doesn't fit in this particular cycle. So McManus was aware of this. It is the fifth tree in the spring acme. So McManus believed and researched there was a much better interpretation for Nun. And he linked Nun to a Gaelic phrase that goes something like costed she. And medieval scribes, when they heard this from oral language, they interpreted it as having something to do with establishing peace. Custard has a kind of translation of sustainable, but this has to be linked to the she from the other world too. So McManus believed the sustainable, well, and he didn't believe, he suspected that the use of custard sustainable was the provision of nectar, which is what happens in spring. So the clue for the correct placing here by McManus was we needed a tree of blossom that was going to lead to a great loading of fruit. And I'll not go through more of the reasoning of the Nin Custard She translation, but McManus ended up concluding that instead of the ash, it should be this one, the cherry tree. And that certainly grows here. And that's much more suited for the Ogham place. So very controversial. In the Nin place, we have, it's Nin the cherry. So cherry tree instead of ash, I feel, is perfect for this transition season from spring, and we're going to go into Beltner. So knowing the ash or cherry trees, the annual cycle readers, 18th of February to 17th of March. And if you burn cherry wood, actually, it's a great wood for inviting people to come together. As a prompt for accepting, it's fifth note from our budding, blossoming spring, and it's the encouragement of learning tolerance and forgiveness. Also, with the cherry, you can say it's a conduit between ego and connection, our connection of inner self to nature, as I was talking about earlier when I was saying what's missing. Linear thinking, comparing to whole thinking, converting to whole thinking, journey from isolation to community, the healer of anxiety, returning harmony, and awareness of the consequences of karma. So we're going to change our acmas now. Second acma, which is the trees of the season from Beldner to Lunasa. And this is our summer. It relates to our fruiting, our personal fruiting. And we start off with Hua or Ua, the hawthorn. And it's either a tree of or on some people are afraid of the hawthorn. And Ua the hawthorn is the first of the tree of the second pentatonic acme, and it represents Bildner to Luna. So we think of hawthorn. Here we go. That's the Ogmatala of the trees. We think of it as a symbol of mischief, superstition, and we don't bring it into our homes, do we? It's a fragrance, I feel, that it starts off sweet and enchanting, and boy, after a few days, it's just like rotting flesh, I think. But it's a tree that may cause us to either or fear the fairies. Anyway, McManus declared that all was well on the sound with having hawthorn there. So, who are the hawthorn? The annual cycle readers is 13th of May to 9th of June, and the fire burning of hawthorn sticks is for inspiring closeness, intimacy, and bonded fellowship, and make sure you do all that outside. As a prompt for mating, it's the first note of our fruiting summer. Encourages flirting, courting, and mischief, and it also promotes lustiness, innocence. Is a conduit for the Fae and the She world, if we want to enter that. Also of conception, self-defense, also of heartsease, because it's a great therapy on heart problems, and also for vision too. So get on to the oak. Rushing through this, do the oak or dare the oak. No problem there for McManus, rightly placed. And this here, and I haven't got my lost it. No, there he is. There he is. Got mixed up. That's the Taylor the Trees one. Annual cycle readers, 10th of June to 7th of July. And those who are fire burning the logs, do that for successful outcome of trading and meetings, especially in council, to inspire compromise. The prompt is accountability from oak, and it's the second note of our fruiting summer. It encourages us to be present to all things around us at all times, also prompting for strength, confidence, balance, fair trade, durability, and unity. And now, and this is the next controversial one, if I can find it, is the holly tree. Tinya the holly, McManus declared. Actually, this is quite fitting, but Tanya describes a bar. It describes hard metal. It doesn't describe the holly. And what it is a description of having a bar that's hard. Even as I say, we're not talking about metal. We're talking about wood. But so with wood, the holly's very dense. It's a very dense wood, and it's very good wood. It was once used for the shafts of chariots and carts because it was so durable, and also used for the handles of weapons such as knives, daggers, and swords. So holly is declared appropriate. So we have Tinya the holly from the Omer's book. Annual cycle readers, 8th of July, 4th of August. If you're fire burning it, great for protection and preventing distraction. The great, the tin's very good prompt for courage. It's the third note of our fruiting summer and encourages us to be honest with our affirmations, our prayers, and our wishes. Also prompts service, protection, bravery, endurance, and prevents our heart ruling our head. And there's also hazel. I love the hazel one. Shame we haven't got a live version of this. Um, we know about it forming its green nuts by Lunasa, and so with Cola Hazel from the Oma book. Annual cycle readers, this is 5th of August to 1st of September. For the fire burners in celebration, burn for vision and wisdom. And that's the final 9th burning ritual wood. So we've covered the ritual woods here. But Cola Hazel, also prompting for nourishment, is the 4th note of our fruiting summer. It's great encouragement for giving and receiving nourishment that's way beyond food, and also prompts divination, enlightenment, wisdom over knowledge, synthesis, mediumship, what comes out of our muse, our mentoring, our teaching. It's all about anything to do with the wisdom. And there's also no dispute from McManus over the last one of the this acme, the second one. We're talking about the apple, Kurt the apple, or Kurt, some people say, or Kayat the apple, despite the weird use of Q instead of C when we say Kurt. And that's because otherwise there'd be Colin Kurt with two C's. We'd have a great problem with that. And right, I think I'm back. I hope I'm back. Sorry about that. This is getting very annoying, very frustrating. And a long session as well. I've no idea why this is happening. So I trust you're all hearing me okay. I'm just going to do a quick check on the mic with make sure you're getting everything. You should be getting me okay. No, you're not. Hello. Yes, you are getting me. I hope everything's fine. I don't know why this cutoff is happening. You're back. Great. Phew, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. This is. Anyway, there's a lovely story of the ancient wording of apple. It links its relationship to enchanting and healing. But I'll have to leave that for another day because we're really moving on. So, quote the apple. Quote the apple. get back to my pictures. There we go. That's the Ogham. Uh, their fifth note of our fruiting summer, prompt for connecting, and his encouragement of accepting our inspirations and dreams and using them as our guide. And it's a great prompt for wishes, prayers, affirmations. Psh, when you bite into the apple, the vision quest wonder, great for psychic connection and vision awareness, and it helps to eliminate fear. That's why people put apples under their pillows. So we're halfway through the own symbols, and Chandler's been waiting in the back. I'm going to see if there's anything that you've been saying, and we'll get Chandler on. Mike checks, all good, still here, you're back. Thumbs up. So the fruit trees are bending their knees so we can shake hands and swap secrets. And someone importantly said that the holly tree is a one wood, and the chaga mushrooms only grow on birch trees. Didn't the old Chinese farmers use? Now that the message is not coming up. There we go. From Little Wing, didn't Chinese farmers use cherry blossom to determine the time of harvest? Great. Um, that just adds to the what McManus has come up with. But I better not go into that further, seeing as time them is moving on very rapidly here. And Anna's here from Pennsylvania, watching the archive. All these lovely pictures are longing for spring. And well, there's something else been going in here. So there's chat about gathering rowan sticks. Wonderful tree helps to remember association. Yeah, great. I wish I'd got more on the chat. You really got a good chat on this one, which is absolutely fabulous. And I better get rid of one of the pictures here so we can get our wonderful guest in. And Chandler, we've got you. I've still got stuff up. I'm gonna not gonna. How are you doing there, Chandler? Good afternoon here. Good morning to you there. Um, Thank you for the patience in waiting. And how are you doing there?
I'm doing well, John. Thank you.
Absolutely fabulous. And you've got something connected to the Ogham for us today.
I do, absolutely.
So, without further ado, if you share with us the wonderful Chandler again that everybody loves the poems. Looking forward to this. Thank you, and everything's looking great there. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you for having me again. I really liked what you were talking about at the start with prompts and really listening to these prompts and working with them. I think there's certainly a lot we can learn from books. I think they're a great start, but when we really learn to listen to this tree language, the trees act as such wonderful guides. At least to me, they've been imperative in my life. So the poem I'm going to share with you today is about Lewis, the rowan. And I have my little rowan Ogham stick here with me to perhaps guide my poem. So I hope you enjoy. I like to think that man created language to describe his surroundings. Perhaps he first spoke to warn his comrade of a fallen branch, or to recite the patterns of the seasons around him, or the cycles within him. Language describes patterns. As such, it is not created, but discovered. Just as mathematics interpret the patterns of the universe, those patterns that already existed. Language is a social construct, though there are more ways to communicate than by the spoken word. This is what the trees taught me. The silver maple preached this to me. He told me it is the language of the universe, the language of silence, the language of the trees. For weeks, for months, for years I sat within him, atop his roots, against his trunk, beneath his crown, and listened. I did not need to say much to him, for a touch seemed enough. In that touch he communicated. I watched his leaves in the wind and listened to the sound of the breeze passing through. That gentle rustle of a bending bough and shaken leaves expressed his joy. In the storms, his creaking limbs whispered tales of terror, while the pattering of a gentle raindrop upon his leaf wept with me. He was the first to bud in the spring and the last to drop his leaves in the fall. In these subtle changes, he reciprocated love, while stagnant, hushed leaves taught me bitter foresight. This is what the trees taught me. I learned to listen to more than what is spoken. I read the subtleties in motion, in thought, in existence, in the lack thereof. Because the language of the trees is the language of profound silence, the language of observance, the language of patience, the language of truth. When learned, one can hear souls calling. I was in Glen Car when I heard the voice summoning me from the water's edge. The voice was hollow, a contrast to the rushing cascades in that lush and magical forest. Like the stolen child, I followed mindlessly toward that silvery bark to heed the call of the rowan. Magical it seemed, for the leaves were perfectly symmetrical and green, and from them budded crimson berries, a burst of color. This was the tree of my dreams, though we had never before met. A tree of visions, of prophecy. This was my mysterious guide, with knobs on the bark like eyes, branches like antlers, berries red like the ears of a fairy hound. I heard the rowan in the depths of my soul, as if the string of dreams was strummed on the harp. Blessed be thy visions, thy dream, thy prophecy, thy past interred in the soil like roots, and thy future written in my branches. When you call upon the horned one, Lord of the hunt, my protector, you shall hear the branch fall in the forest beyond thy flame, beyond thy words, beyond thine outstretched hands, and know of his presence. From Glen Car, these words traveled with me, and surely on a solstice eve, through the flames I saw the horned one dancing, and all the trees singing in that unspoken language, calling that sacred name, a clashing through the forest, the rowan's truth unfurled before me. I like to think that man discovered language to describe his surroundings. Perhaps he first spoke, learned by the words of a fallen branch, to recite the patterns of the seasons around him and the cycles within him. Language describes patterns. As such, it is not created but discovered. Just as mathematics interpret the patterns of the universe, these patterns that already existed.
Oh, wow. Thanks very much for that. That's, as usual, stunning, beautiful boy. Your poetry is developing there, and the
Thank you.
setting was gorgeous. So, great contribution. Sorry we're rushing you along today, but that was a lovely interlude in the middle of a very long presentation. Thanks again, Chandler, and
Thank
I'm
you.
sure we'll have you again very soon again. Thank you for that. Ah, beautiful. Chandler again. Great poem, it certainly is. And greetings from Little Wing as well. Absolutely. And thank you for all those of you that are staying with you. What's going here? When you toggle the pictures, it seems to be worse, whatever that is. Uh, Toggle the pictures. I must admit the pictures are not staying up for me very easily, so I'm not quite sure what that's meaning there. There again, when I was talking about earlier, right at the beginning, talking about the prompts and what's missing the Stream Deck. If I had the Stream Deck, it might hold the pictures in stronger. We'll get to that soon. Beautiful from Chandler. Beautiful poem. Thank you, S. Lee is saying here. So I'm going to move on with the second half here, and this is obviously going to be the longest show we've had. I hope you don't mind. We'll probably go on for about 15 to 20 minutes at the most, because this is where McManus did some incredible changes and it's worth going through this and reviewing this. And we're going on to our third acme, our autumn of our life, our Here we go. I'm back, and I hope that's there. Sorry about that. I have no idea why this is cutting off today. It's very strange, and fiddling around whilst I was. Anyway, and we'll go on. I'll just continue, and I hope you've got the vocals okay. We're going to go on from Luna to the Sawan. Perhaps the most confusing and disputed is Moon. And we're getting a Moon. So Moon, vine of what? And getting back to my pictures on this, because we hear of Moon, the vine, and it's very, of all of the symbols, it's the one that doesn't seem very clear. Some people think vine, but that's not a tree. What on earth are we talking about here? And this is the symbol I've got in the Orma Tale of the Trees. But McManus says, what the heck is this? What is Min? What is the meaning of it? There's various interpretations. One was for the description of the neck. Our neck is a Min, where the neck joins the back. And it's also a description of the path of the voice box. And it's also variations used as slang for deceit, slaughter, and even selfish love. So I'm not going to explain the discovery and journey of the meaning of Min or Moon, but there was a common flow of words in translations that McManus realized. And the common of this, when you're talking about throat, you're talking on love situations, even on deceit and voice, there was a common denominator talking about purging. So let's look at purging. Let's look at something that was used in natural therapy for purging. And a tree that was used a lot in medicine, still is by some herbalists, is buckthorn. The fruits are used for purging, used in therapy, and these come out in, this fruit comes out in autumn. So my man's thought the moon, the buckthorn, is probably best placed here. And there's the fruit. So we're not talking about the sea buckthorn, it's that buckthorn. The land-based buckthorn. So that's his conclusion. That's probably more controversial than the ash. But anyways, for annual cycle readers, we're talking about 2nd of September to 29th of September. Prompt for flowing. It's the time of our harvesting autumn. It's the first note, and it encourages the allowing of dreams to manifest in our waking world, especially if we purged into clarity. So there's a prompting from muddiness into prophecy, openness, honesty, lessons learned, and maybe a connection to journaling. Anyway, let's go move on to Gort or Gourd. The ivy, another one that's in dispute. Some think the Gort and Gourd is honeysuckle. Some scholars tell me that it's not ivy, it's honeysuckle. But the Irish for honeysuckle is something like Edlin, and ivy is Eden. But McManus is not keen on either of those because they're not standalone trees. And he suggests that this was all misled in the medieval times due to understanding pronunciations and how they scribe them down, especially Eden for ivy and Eton for firth. You know, the way that the brogue was, this could have been confused. So he's looking at furs instead. McManus favors furs or gorse, same thing really, because in the past the furs was not regarded as a pesky weed as it is today. It actually added value to the land. And let's get you a picture up of what I'm talking about with the furs. You're probably familiar with it, especially if you're up in Oregon. There we go there. And that does grow up into a tree if you let it. And furs is a wonderful nitrogen fixer. Its presence can actually turn toxic land into fertile land. and it's now being published as a potential protein source. And so there's a lot of small-holding home farm people are using their furs trying to create some kind of protein. But furs is usually harvested in autumn, anyways. Is It's favorable. It used to be favorable as livestock bedding and fodder because when it's dry, the needles kind of get soft and it's fine for bedding then. Very different to farmers burning furs like they do today. So McManus suggested the gourd for furs, or as we call gorse, is much more appropriate. And for annual cycle readers, that's the 30th of September, the 27th of October. It's a prompt for trusting, second of the harvesting autumn, and encourage us to be aware of our unseen spirit guides. Also for fair play, opening the chakras, and the spirals start unraveling. Now we got another one. As I say, this is all controversial stuff here. We have the nettle, or some people saying nettle, gettle, for reed. And again, that's as far away from a tree in the Ogham that we've been learning that we can get. So McManus looked into this and he points out that gettle was once translated as the act of wounding, and it's related to a Welsh word of guano, which means the same thing. So Nagettle or nettle, I think it sounds like nettle, doesn't it? Nettle is also being applied to fern and bog myrtle, in addition to reed, but none of their old names translate to wounding and stabbing. So again, it's a long story, and I will skip the McManus how he arrived at the nettle being broom, which is very different to his broom. Is very different to the gores. Here we go. Let's say the firs, the gores there. And if you let it grow as a tree, that's what it looks like. It's a tree. It grows up as a spindly tree like that. And there's the broom there, which we're talking about now, as following on from the firs. And that's what that looks like as a tree. You see, very different. There's the first tree. There's the broom tree. And they look very different. So this may be confusing to many people regarding firs and broom as being the same, let alone both of them grown as trees and looking very different. But they look similar. Broom here, it has the needles. If I can bring it back again without, yeah, there you go. Broom that has needles, and the flowers have a scent towards that. Oh, sorry, I'm getting this wrong. Firs has the needles, and they're horrible when they get you. You go into that bush, they're really horrible. But you go to broom, there's no needles there. So that's the difference. And the scent is more towards vanilla on the broom. And the flowers of broom, they're much more abundant and they're much bigger than the gorse flowers too. So the uses are very different. The brooms we know for sweeping, brushing, and weaving. And broom is also used for healing wounds on the battlefield. It slows down the blood pulse, and it brings on sleeping as well. That allows for relaxed healing after a wound. So firs and gorse are together with broom, one after the other, according to McManus. Gorse. So we got the gorse, and then or firs, and then nettle as the broom. So we annual cycle readers, the nettle is 28th of October to 23rd of November. And this is a prompt of instinct. It's the third note of our harvesting autumn and encourages trusting response to our affirmations and prayers. Great for response for wishes, music, vibrations, resonance, harmonics, and reconciliation. So we're going on to strafe next. Another fascinating one, strafe the blackthorn. And that was once translated as sulfur. Look how black those sticks are. I think that's the important thing to think of here. And you may be aware of how sulfur creates a black tarnish on silver. So the black bark of the blackthorn is likened to that. And here's a blackthorn tree in full blossom there. And also thinking of the burning of sulfur, of brimstone, and the bitterness of fresh picked sloes. You know, those black berries that we get in autumn. And they are in folklore related to brimstone. So McManus is very happy with strafe staying as blackthorn. So we have the Ogham one here, straight for the black form, and prompts for surrender. Fourth note of our harvesting autumn encourages awareness of our egos and balance that with our place in all situations. The balance of egos with our surrounding, and that is a prompt for surrender. And also for our triumph over adversity, allowing crone guidance, transition of darkness to light, letting go, and just going with the flow of situations. So let's go to Rush the Elder. The next one. And like Lush the Rowan, it refers to reds, and then you got the fruits, elder fruits once used in cosmetics for the red effects for cheeks. And in plant medicine, Rush was used on red spots too to get for blemishes, covering blemishes. The berries they're harvested in autumn from the elder tree. That's actually one in blossom rather than berries. But McManus declared this is the rightful place for Rush the Elder, and that's what I've got. Rush the Elder there in the Urban Tale of Trees for you annual readers. That's 24th of November to 23rd of December. It prompts conscience. It's the fifth note of our harvesting autumn. Encourages listening to an inner voice that guides us through our choices. Great prompting for rejuvenation, maturity, pure breathing, and also being childlike without being childish. All about, and this is a good thing for the elderberries, renewed vitality. And that completes the annual cycle of the 13 signs, but not the full Ogham cycle. So I'm going to finish off with the fourth acme, which is our winter, our divinity. And this is so on to the Imbolc time. And we start off with the first one. Is it pine or is it elm? I go with the pine. Uh, so we got the words alim or alumum, and relates to the word palm. All those words relate to a palm. So we got alim or alm. It's like palm without the p sound, and because ancients actually regarded pines as palms and not elms. That's where the confusion is with the elm. I think is the pronunciation again. So this is the fourth acme, and we're starting off. So on to Imbolc, time of transition, regeneration, transformation, a time when the old harvest debris becomes the fertile again for spring. And it's interesting that all the five Owen symbols through the winter acme are vowels. They're all out vowels. So McManus sustains kicking off this winter acme with alum, the pine, the palm, the pine. And here it is from the Oma Taylor, the trees, and a prompt for service, the first note of our transforming winter, encourages discovering our true home from which to serve from, prompts clearer vision and understanding of boundaries and perception of ourselves as individuals mixed in and connecting with the whole. So, own or which is, we've already talked about gorse, and in the you might know, you might be thinking of Owen, the gorse or the firs, but McManus has assigned this to autumn, um, and he's put the elm. He said that the Owen or whichever translation we take for this, is an ancient Gallic word that actually is a variation from ash tree. We took that out of the cherry area, if you remember. And he says he reckons this is much more appropriate for this time. And there's also an old Welsh word, onan, and it's symbolized as revelation, which is prompted by the lush leaves of the ash, especially when they're golden and they fall in the fall, in the autumn, and become part of the soil that's around it. So that was regarded as a huge symbolism. And if you may recall, as I say, knowing the ash became a cherry tree at the end of the first acme, but here we are. McManus has speculated the ash is more fitting here as on the ash. And what have I got for on the ash? Let's bring up the ash again. I don't have a picture. Sorry. So all on the gauze furs or ash. What is it? I like the ash one. Prompt for revelation. It's the second note of our transforming winter and encourages detoxing our soul so our visions become clearer. Certainly prompting for the clearing of deadwood, visions from the deadwood, going back into the soil for new life, replacing the toxic with the fertile. It's all about sustainability and focusing on the journey before destination. So we go on to heather, another non-tree. The heather. Um, what have I got for this one? Different again. It seems to be short for Euro. I can't pronounce this. Euro Euro I sorry, I haven't got a pronunciation or the spelling for you. But it's short for seems to be a phrase for the cold space on Earth. So this is a term that became used on graves. Urn, think of urn and with the ashes. That's actually comes from this word. Uh, Europe had to, I'll have to work out pronunciation and do a separate video of this to make it more clearer. But for now, let's think it's also related to urn, which is shortened. And this is a long story, but McManus speculated that that's been put with the heather in the Ogham is more fitting to the elm and the slimy, slippery elm right here because if you touch an elm, it always seems to have a cold, slimy bark as if it's always constantly rotting. And this is because the elm pulls up and stores an incredible amount of sap. And there's a tree with a lot of sap, which in Irish is known as cranur. Lovely coincidence. So out goes all the heather, and in comes the elm. And there's another one of an elm, a dark elm there. So it's great for actually for all that, prompting clarity, third note of our transforming winter, and encourages clear vision of a quest to serve. So related certainly to clairvoyance, de-stressing, focused mind, ambience, all these prompts, prompts of memory. Anyway, my Manus doesn't dispute the next one, thank goodness. This is the aspen of popular Adad, which is the aspen. There's some confusion over the naming, though. But anyway, I'm not going to go into that. Running out of time. Uh, I've run out of time already. But anyway, we've got the aspen, and it could be popular. And this is from the Oma Taylor's The Trees is the appropriate place. Prompting transparency, fourth note of the transforming winter. And it encourages to become at one with all things, but owner of none. Prompts strong will, fearlessness, and it's also good for protection and resilience. So we got the last one, yew or edu, the yew, the regenerating tree. There we go. Connecting the past with the future, making sure there's no beginning or end. It's part of the cycle before Betha Birch. So edu or you, the you, there we go. In the that's the way it is in Oma Tailored Trees. Prompting wisdom. It's the fifth and final note of the final. I shouldn't say that. Fifth note of the transforming winter, encouraging becoming attuned to cycles and resurrection, and that there is no end because it's a regenerating tree. The reason they live thousands of years is the middle, the center of the U keeps replacing itself and pushes out. So it prompts regeneration, embracing change, immortality, and unleashing our beliefs. So through McManus in his interpretation of the Ogham, it replaced non-trees here with trees. It shuffled the trees into more appropriate seasons. And there's two native trees in Ireland that are kept out of this. They're still missing. We haven't got the white beam or the juniper, two Irish trees, two Welsh trees too, that are not in this collection. And the mythology of whitebeam really is so close to the hazel, and the mythology of juniper is so close to yew. And McManus has concluded that's why they missed out, because it'd be a duplication with those two. And Melina, who did all this artwork for us, she's put it all together in a cycle wheel here. Forget her married name now, but Melina did the artwork. And there you go. There's her version of the Fionas Window. that I showed earlier out of the book of Ballymote. So that's my version of the reinterpretation of Owen symbols done by McManus. And I think for next year, I'm going to do a video of all that, and probably in 4 parts, 4 short videos for our subscribers. So when I do this next year, it'll be more a chatty session. Other scholars, they're claiming not to just relate trees to Ogham. They teach that other things can be symbols, as well as associating trees to Ogham. We can relate animals, rocks. All this came later, I suppose. But add to that, there were various tree symbol languages around the world, which I've talked about. The Chinese had 1 or 2 of them for a start. How am I doing? There was a third guest, Margie Dunn. Now, I think before we get into Margie, I'm going to get concluding here, because let's see, there's something. What we got coming up? I'm going to talk about what's coming up in the further weeks, and then we'll have Margie Dunn. So what we got? 23rd of January, we've got the 3rd and final divination series. It's the water serpent one. And that's a lovely transition between divination and the coming of spring. The water serpent's a huge symbol of the Chinese New Year. And we'll look at how these myths relate to this transition time, because there are water serpents around Ireland. There's Lochree's got one. We got one that comes out of the cave of Cashir. The Shannon has one. The Unshin has one. There's various around water serpents around Ireland. So I'll talk about those as well as the Chinese mythology influence. So it takes us from divination into the birth of spring next week. And then from the 30th of January, we've got 4 Imbolc series, and I haven't got the pictures for them yet. I'll bring those up next week. But 30th of January, we have the Breeder Tales, Bridget Tales. 6th of February, go through the Imbolc traditions for the new spring. 13th of February is part 1 of the She. Lovely to go through the She folklore as we're moving into spring. It's a lot related to the snow that we usually get at that time, and the flow of water, which is being brought up by the serpents anyway. So it's the She part 1. There's a lot of underground stuff going on, fresh underground stuff, bringing stuff up. Do I have no, I thought I might have had some snowdrops, nice symbol for that type of thing. And then the 20th of February, I finish on part 2. And it's worth mentioning that on the 30th of January, the first one there, the Breach Tales, that might be the last one, actually. Last Nature Folklore to be broadcasted from Carrickcrory. So we might make something special of that. As I say, we got the 3rd and final guest, that's Margie Dunn. Margie's quite amazing. She's an artist, fabulous artist, County Roscommon. She lives near Loch Key. She's a painter. She's got a lovely studio. I've got a picture of her studio. This is it. This is quite close to Loch Key. That's where she works from, amongst the trees there by Loch Key. And wonderful. And Margie's also a wonderful poet and story writer. She used to come round often on her bards in the woods with her husband Dan. And today, actually, this is a lovely roundup to finish off with, because I've been rattling on about McManus's interpretation. We've talked about the 13 Owen signs of from the White Goddess, from Graves. This is going back to what you're more familiar with. I have to include this with you because I think this is so sweet. This is Margie doing something completely different to what she normally does. This is her presentation of the Ogham in a way that you're probably familiar with. No, it won't come on.
Hi, I'm going to talk about the Ogham alphabet, and I've made out a chart to show you the different symbols that were used. Celtic Ogham alphabet is believed to have been used as a tool for divination in pagan times, but there is no evidence. The symbols have been carved out of sacred trees, usually 25 wooden staves, and each symbol has a meaning. As you can see from the chart, the first one is birth, and that represents, the birch, and that represents rebirth. The second one is rowan, and that represents protection from spirits. The third one is alder, which helps you to follow your instincts. Fourth one is willow, which gives you knowledge. The fifth one represents wisdom. The sixth one, hawthorn, which represents cleansing. The seventh one is oak, which gives you self-confidence. The eighth one is holly, which gives you protection. The ninth one is hazel, which again gives wisdom. The 10th is apple, which represents love and faithfulness. 11 is the vine, which denotes prophecy. The 12th one is ivy, which gives good fortune to women and their health. The 13th is reed, which gives health. The 14th is blackthorn, which gives authority. The 15th is elder, which represents maturity. The 16th is elm, which represents prosperity. The 17th is gorse or furze, which gives hope. 18 is heather, which represents passion. 19 is the aspen tree, which gives you courage. The 20 is the yew, which represents death. 21 is the grove of trees, for example, aspen and birch, which represents harmony. 22 is the spindle tree, which represents homes and family. Number 23 is the honeysuckle, which denotes disease. Number 24 is pine, which is a symbol of guilt. And 25 is witch hazel, which is a symbol of purification. Thank you.
And thank you as well. I've still got her home up. I thought that was very sweet, lovely, and we can't get rid of her home. There's Margie. And see, she went into the full 25. The extra 5 were added on, I think, somewhere between the 7th and 9th century, and it got included in the book of Ballymoe. So thank you all for holding on to this. There's a lot of comments I haven't gone through. Let's have a look what you're saying. Have an awesome day, says Little Wing. Alimus sending love. And Cliff can only work with the 18, which is the basis of the Gaelic language, of course. Great chatting with you. Wonderful. Let's see. Wonderful. Many thanks. Cosmetics. There we go. And actually Margie kind of fulfills what Edward's saying there. The double vowel sounds. Vowels plus 18. We're getting a lot of mathematics coming up here. Well, that's the one thing with this, because we've been dealing with the 13 symbols, the 13 moons, the graves. I dealt with the basic 20, which was all shuffled around by McManus. And I do love the McManus one because of the research into it. I do believe, like he says, that the scribes were lazy, because one thing about the scribes, if you think about it, they were under the orders of their sponsors, of their, I'm trying to think of the word, I'm going to be brain dead now, the patrons, because their patrons supplied their food, their accommodation, even gave them people to work their land so they could actually come into the scriptorium and start scribing. And these people that were patrons for them, all they were interested in was to bring a sort of higher prestige to their lineage, to their ancestry, to who they are now and where they were going. They wanted to be seen as heroes that were put down forever in these annals. That was their interest. So the last thing they wanted in their annals was about the peasants, about the pagans, about the ordinary people. They had to write stuff that elevated the imagery of these people that were patrons of them. So when it came to something like the Ogham, and there was interpretations, there must have been a lot of, that'll do, because it wouldn't have been much to do with the prestige of the sponsors to them. And I think that's where we get errors. Yet we've kind of got into fixed minds like we do over traditional things. If it's written down, that's the tradition as it was. We've stopped believing, I think, in the evolving tradition as it is. And that's what I like about Damien McManus. He's challenged all that because he is a researcher into ancient languages, and he has this background of looking beyond what the scribes would have been educated in, even though he wasn't there at the time of the scribes live. Just by his application, it makes a lot of sense because he's taken in the seasons, he's taken in the landscapes and the environmentals, which maybe these scholars, maybe on the quiet, because they were from the present culture, they were educated, maybe they would have done, but they wouldn't have gone away with it. Anyway, that's my ramble on that. So thanks again, amazing guest. Cliff Carr, thank you for the song. Chandler for the beautiful poetry. And Marja Dunn for the sweet conclusion, bringing it all together. And a lot of you will be watching the archives of this, the longest ever uh, nature folklore. And I'll go to answer your comments if you answer them later. I look every day to see what comments to say. So it's great what we got. Margie, just lovely from Claire. Have an awesome day, everyone. And thank you so much for following this right through, including the mathematics. Keep putting your comments in the comments because there's a lot of controversial stuff in this. So enjoy a safe week. It'll be kind of a more simple, more guesty one next week with the water serpents. Not so technical. So wishing you a safe week, full of inspiration, full of lovely prompts. I think you'll enjoy the prompt of next week. And that's all I've got, really. So thank you very much. And thanks for sticking with this, especially when it got cut out a few times for reasons I'll have to research. In. So thank you very much. Have a great week. I better go now. Bye. Ah. Oh dear, we're really going to the end, aren't we, on this? Right, thank you.